I miss a dominant masculinity. Yeah, I get the toxic thing. I get it. I get it. But still, I like a real man.
During an appearance on Barry Weiss's podcast, comedian Jerry Seinfeld, decided to wax nostalgic about a time that didn't actually exist, and about things that aren't actually real.
And the other thing is, as a man, can I say that?
You sure you are? Are you?
I've always wanted to be.
I didn't ask your pronouns before we began.
I've always wanted to be a real man. I never made it. But I really thought when I was in that era, again, it was JFK, it was Muhammad Ali, it was Sean Connery, Howard Cosell. You can go all the way down there. That's a real man. I want to be like that someday. Well, no. I never really grew up. I mean, you don't want to as a comedian because it's a childish pursuit. But I miss a dominant masculinity. Yeah, I get the toxic thing. I get it. I get it. But still, I like a real man.
Look, he's right about one thing. Jerry Seinfeld never grew up. Okay, he grew old. Don't get me wrong, though. Okay, so he cites JFK, Muhammad Ali. They're not exactly bad examples, okay, of, great men, right? Because I have great respect for Muhammad Ali specifically. He literally went to prison to protest the war in Vietnam and was blacklisted for a long time as a result of that in the sports world. He was also a Muslim, so a Muslim convert. And he said, look, I love this quote. Man, I ain't got no quarrel with them Viet Cong. Why should they ask me to put on a uniform and go 10,000 miles from home and drop bombs and bullets on brown people in Vietnam while so-called Negro people in Louisville are treated like dogs and denied simple human rights? Hey, I love that because he makes an excellent point. Like, yeah, why are we doing this? We should, actually have equal human rights for people here at home and not be doing the military-industrial complex. I love that. And now JFK, again, we went to the moon as a result of his presidency, okay? So yeah, you can look up to them, but at the same time, you also have to realize that as human beings, they have flaws. When you idolize people as examples like he does, as dominant masculinity, he's a real man, well, you ignore flaws, okay? And that's what children do, because children don't know better. They don't quite understand. They look and see, oh, wow, the model person. And then when you grow up, you're like, oh, it turns out that there were some faults here, there were some flaws. But you can still, appreciate their accomplishments and strive to, make accomplishments of your own. There's nothing wrong with that. Jerry Seinfeld should know this. He's an adult. He should know better, okay? But here's the thing. When he talks about the toxic masculinity part, right? Understand that the problem with toxic masculinity is not the masculinity. There's nothing wrong with being masculine. There's nothing wrong with being feminine. There's nothing wrong with being a mixture of both. It doesn't matter, okay? The toxic part is the problem. That's why it's toxic. It's actually not very masculine at all to be toxically masculine, all right? Because part of that is trying to control other people, being misogynistic and being homophobic. That's not good, okay? That's not masculine at all. That's super, super insecure. Self-reliance and emotional repression, which are traits of toxic masculinity, people that have toxic masculinity, believe in it, live that way, they're actually correlated with increased psychological problems in men such as depression, stress, substance abuse disorders. Oops. People who have traits of toxic masculinity are actually, in reality, deeply insecure people and need help. Funny enough, these are the same ones that are like, I'll never do therapy. The people who need it most will refuse to do it, of course. Somebody who is well-adjusted isn't going to be offended by pronouns, isn't going to be offended by femboys or trans people. Doesn't matter. Who cares? When it comes down to it, though, so-called traditional gender roles, again, what he's talking about, harkening back to the 1960s era, they're made up. Yes, gender roles are made up. Hey, look, if you want to live by a certain gender role, that's up to you. Okay, that's fine. But they're not real. These ideals have actually been pushed by authority figures for a purpose. It means the social control. Authority figures, churches, governments, etc. In order to, control populations. When you look at those ideals, they're pretty much impossible to meet. And what do I mean by that? Take the ideal perfect feminine woman, right? What they expect. I'm talking about the traditional woman. Thin, bleach blonde, people pleasing, always perky, always happy, smile more, taking care of the family, doing all the housework, cooking, cleaning, dishes, you name it, taking care of the babies, household chores, all while the husband works. And then when the husband gets home, well, I mean, she has a hot meal waiting for him, on the table. Wow, great, thank you. And then, of course, any desires that the husband has, she's obligated to fulfill them. That and this is all, of course, with no regard to what she wants her life to be like. And so, that ideal is not possible. It's not real, and it sounds like you would be miserable. Okay, and honestly, with some of the stuff that's come out about the trad wife movement and how a lot of these women who go into that lifestyle and then come out, they're like, oh my God, it was hell. This was not the way that I wanted to live. This turned out to be a very bad idea. And then let's get to the ideal of a masculine man, which is also not real, okay? And there's somebody who's always strong protector, breadwinner, stoic. I never show any emotion whatsoever. I am always competitive, manly man. No, not possible. That's not being a human being, okay? And so the real nasty thing about these ideals is that they teach you that if you are not living up to these impossible human social standards, that you are the problem, that you have failed. You're not manly enough. It must be the weak man. The weak men create bad times, and the strong men create the good times that create the weak men. No, that's all bullshit. That's all crap, right? They want you to blame yourself so that you don't look at how the people that are actually starting, that are causing the problems in the first place. And that is usually the people in power, okay? Usually the elites, usually the institutions, like the governments, like the churches, that are pushing these ideologies on people. And when you blame yourself for the failings of not being able to keep up, like, for example, when it comes to men and unemployment and not being able to be, the traditional breadwinner and how that creates depression among young men specifically, it's the problem with the economy. It's not the problem with you. Jobs don't pay enough. Education is incredibly expensive, and it's still the only shot. I mean, people who, get a bachelor's degree are still able to out-earn people with a high school diploma. But at the same time, it's still super expensive to live, to buy a home. There's almost nowhere in this country for an average person to be able to make it on one income alone. And so that just blows away the entire traditional, man breadwinner thing. Okay, it blows it right out of the water. Sure, there was a day where you could actually do that. And that was because of strong unions, labor. The power of labor, corporations were actually kept in check by labor forces so that CEO pay wasn't like 500 times that of the median worker pay, like it is now. And so those economic forces, I mean, again, people get stuck blaming themselves for these economic forces that have actually made their lives more difficult. And instead of blaming the people who are actually doing this, greedy CEOs and things like that, and lawmakers that are corrupt, people blame themselves. They look internally, right? And same thing, something similar with women, keeping up with this insane beauty standards that are pushed, and not being able to juggle everything that they're expected to do in a day with a smile on their face. It's just not sustainable, all right? But that, and understand how this applies to Seinfeld, what he's talking about, it's an idealized vision that was never really true. Just like his characters, it's just not real. Not real at all. So now he got some responses here because a lot of people were not buying this crap. Emo Dragon, friend of the show, he said this, and it's a really great post. It's never lost on me that people like Jerry Seinfeld romanticizing dominant masculinity rarely even live up to their own standards of masculinity, much like Trump, Bill Maher, Josh Hawley, or Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson, let me just say something about Tucker Carlson. That boy is so soft, okay? Soft hands. Never did a day of work in his life, okay? Swanson hair. Come on. It's like Ben Shapiro going and buying one singular slice of wood, all right? I do not consider myself a hyper-masculine handy man. I rebuilt my deck last summer, okay? Why? Because if I didn't, I would fall through my deck, right? So you kind of have to do what you have to do. I don't consider myself a handy person, but I guarantee I could outbuild Ben Shapiro on pretty much anything, all right? That said, getting back to the comment here, he says, we need to ditch toxic masculinity and stop getting hung up on gender norms, which again are, yes, 100%, gender norms are just made up. Like a lot of things in our society. It's kind of what society is. We've all gotten together and made up rules and just decided to live by them. Okay, so if we can make up those rules, we can make up other ones, possibly better ones. Yeah. Other comments here. Nurse Ratchet says Jerry Seinfeld is the guy the men with dominant masculinity bullied in high school. Thrasher the Bull says, right, because when I think of dominant masculinity, I immediately think of Jerry Seinfeld in his puffy shirt. And then finally, here's another one. Eilish Gilligan says, I know that becoming unfathomably rich gives you practically frictionless life, which is actually not very fun in the long term, but Jesus Christ, if I was this wealthy, I would simply start collecting model horses or something. I would not become nostalgic for dominant masculinity. Right. For a thing that you've never experienced. Or, you know, he could take his money, he could actually do something. Maybe help some people. You know what I'm saying? I don't care. Just stop pining for things that really you have no idea what they really are, and if enacted, would actually do more harm to both men and women than anything else.